going to show you now is ruching. So anyway, my whole point in all that is stay technique focused in this class, bring in images, bring in things or sketches or whatever, and I will help you try to figure those things out. And it's important for me to start learning about your concepts too and what you want to achieve. Like if you want to do accessories or something, that would be totally fine, or anybody in here. I want to help you figure out what you want to do. So the more I know about it, and we'll have a lot of more time for individual meetings and things like that, the more I can help you, not only with what you bring in, but maybe other ideas that you haven't thought of. Okay, so next thing is sort of like a ruching, tucking. It's also horizontal pleating technique. So knitwear is very soft, and you know, if you want to have even hard pleats, knitwear is not the right thing to do for that. You want to use a woven for that. But you can do things like pleating or texture. I see this technique a lot, usually in just kind of like very organic, bunchy texture, which is, I think, how it works out the best if you try to make it. The other thing, I did have a person do a huge collar, a big turtleneck collar, and it was in exactly even, so it made like kind of like a little bubbly effect. That was really cool too. So either keeping it totally consistent, but knowing it's not going to be pleats like flat, hard pleats, but more like bubbles, and also just sort of organic textures. So this is really easy. I did lose my, here it is. If you want to do, okay, so you remember how when we do our slip stitch, I should also show you guys a hem. Where is my needle pusher? I'm missing like a lot of stuff on this machine. Okay, so slip stitch should give me, yeah. So you know how we do Casey and it sets the needles? I just manually set the needles, so you can do this slip stitch. I manually set the needles, pushing one out, and it gives me that stitch behind the stitch, right? This is also how we'll do hems, which I'll show you later, but not right now. So just do one row of slip stitch, so push out every other needle, gives you that stitch underneath. You don't need to change anything up here because I'm not using the punch card, I just manually did it. It will understand it because all this is doing is setting needles. So if I manually set the needles, but I put in the part, which is the slip, and I tell it to do it, it will do it without, I don't need the punch card because I'm just manually setting the needles. So that's another thing to keep in mind too. You know, you can do techniques a little bit slow, but where you're manually setting it up every time, and that works. So if I keep going here, and I'd want to do the same number of rows every time, obviously, but then all I do is I take this and I hang it on every other needle. So this is also how I would do, and it doesn't, you know, people ask me, oh, does it have to be exactly the same needles? I mean, it's good, but if it is, but you know, at the same time, it doesn't really matter that much because knitwear can be super flexible. So same exact needles that you put on the slip.
So you push that every other, and then what is?
And then I hit part right here.
Oh.
So the part is my slip stitch, right? And then, where is that? The part is my slip stitch, and that gave me this row that I can hang right now. And then I'm gonna push these back, and then I'm gonna do it again.
Wait, sorry, I know you just said this, but you don't put it in KC here because...
No, because I'm not using a punch card.
Okay.
So I manually put it out. So put all these, and then I'll show you what happens. So I'm gonna do a row. I could do another slip row. So let's say I'm gonna do another slip row to hang. And then I'm gonna knit and then hang them. So all I'm gonna do is push out every other needle, which I would use a needle pusher if I had one, and put part in. That's my slip stitch. I don't need to mess with anything over here because I'm not using a punch card. I'm just manually doing it. All the punch card does is set your needles for you, and it locks into here so that it can read the card and set the needles differently every time. I'm only doing one row of slip. So I'm gonna go across here, I get that slip row, and then I want to take it out of slip because I don't want to be doing that anymore, and then knit same number of needles, and then I can rehang this. So I'm gonna push out the needles, and like, you know, you might, and then I'm gonna take that slip and hang it up here. So you see that slip, and now it's gonna make a bunch. Basically I'm making pleats, but, or tucks, but they're not gonna be, they're more gonna be like a little like bubble than, you know, a flat kind of pleat like you would get with a woven. So put this like this, squish all of that back, push this out, make sure I'm not on slip anymore, and then knit a row. And what you get is the texture is going to be on the front side, obviously. So you're getting, let me knit a little bit. You're getting this kind of a bubbly texture like this. So basically it's pleats, but they're not gonna be like flat. But if you do them with the same number of rows every time, it'll look like that. So you know, you could have them, figuring out how you wanna do it, you could have them get bigger or smaller, be exactly the same every time. So it's kind of a nice detail. The other way you can do it is with it just being super organic, which a lot of people like that kind of, you know, organic, distressed kind of look with things. So in that case, it becomes really random, and and I don't need to do any slips. I can just, the one thing to keep in mind is the more needles you put stuff on, the more secure it's gonna be. So if I just hang on one needle, it's gonna really pull that stitch out, versus if I hang on 2 needles or 4 needles or something like that, it's gonna be a little bit easier. So all I'm gonna do is take a row below and hang it, and it doesn't even matter. I'm just grabbing whatever. It doesn't matter what I grab right now. And I'm gonna hang it like that, and then just every once in a while, you know, I think it looks better when they're a little bit bigger in terms of the volume that you pick up. So taking from down here, and I'm just gonna kind of do like a random texture pattern, and you can get some really neat, you just have to like, it's really a thing that you're just gonna do in the moment, you know, it's not like really super easy to plan for. So when you're doing swatches and things like that, you'll figure out the width that you want, and then you'll just be kind of shaping it as you go until, you know, using a tape measure or something to find the length that you want, because you're gonna be pulling it up, but you're not gonna change the outside unless you're doing transfers in and out, which is fine, you can do that. But it's not going to really change the outside, it's going to change the length of it to make it shorter or longer. I'll do one more and then I'll show it to you. So just grabbing, and literally you can just grab wherever. This is not an exact science. That's the thing that's really fun about knitwear sometimes, is you can do a lot of stuff with it that you're just kind of like mushing stuff and into things, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It's not tailoring where every like little tiny seam and everything has to be perfect. It's like you can, even if you screw up, you can usually make it work, because you can steam it, and you can, especially when you're using wool fabric, you know, you can really shape it. So then this just kind of gives you kind of a random-y pattern, right? So I did 3 here. So you've got perfect kind of bubbles that are pleats, and then just sort of random texture. So why don't you guys try these?